Hey there, trail trekkers and tall tale seekers. You're tuned in to the 406 Life, the podcast where Montana Max, your Bigfoot buddy and outlaw gear mascot, yeah, that's me, leads you through the wild, weird, and wonderful corners of Montana. Each week we share stories, legends, and laughs from the last best place. So grab your boots and sense of adventure, because we're about to make some Montana-sized memories. This episode's powered by Outlaw Gear, where rebels get their style. Want to look legendary? Mosey over to I'mAnOutlaw.com and claim your outlaw status. Montana Max here, coming at you from somewhere up on the ridge, where the air's thin and the bison don't bother me much. Now today, I want to talk about something that's been weighing on me. I've watched folks wander into Glacier and Yellowstone for a long time, and I'll tell you what, most of them come out the other side just fine. In fact, the vast majority do. But every so often, a few of them don't. And it's almost never bad luck. It's almost always the same handful of mistakes made by good people who just didn't know better. So let's fix that today. And let's be straight about the real numbers while we're at it, because I don't want to scare you into never leaving your car. First thing you need to know is the distance rule, and it's the same whether you're standing in Glacier or Yellowstone. 100 yards from bears and wolves. That's about the length of a football field, so picture that next time you see a bear up on a hillside. 25 yards from everything else. Bison, elk, moose, deer, bighorn sheep, mountain goats. If you don't have a football field handy, here's the trick I use. Hold your thumb up at arm's length. If your thumb doesn't cover the whole animal, you're too close. But here's the test that matters more than any tape measure. If the animal changes what it's doing because you showed up, you already crossed the line. Head comes up. It stops eating. It starts moving toward you instead of away. Animals don't lie about how they feel. People do that. Animals just tell you straight, and you'd best be listening. Now let's talk about bison, because I think this is the animal people get the most wrong. Folks see a bison standing in a meadow, chewing grass, looking about as dangerous as a parked car, and they think, well, that's just a big cow. It is not just a big cow. A bison can run 35 miles an hour. That's about 3 times faster than you. It weighs up to 2,000 pounds. And here's the part that should scare you straight. Researchers looked at injury reports from Yellowstone between 2000 and 2015 and found that when people got hurt by bison, the average distance between the person and the animal beforehand was about 11 feet. 11 feet. That is closer than most living rooms. Since 1980, bison have injured more people in Yellowstone than any other animal. More than bears. More than anything. Now here's where I want to be precise, because the numbers matter. It's usually 1 or 2 injuries a year, on average. Some years worse than others. 2015 saw 5. Almost always because somebody decided 11 feet was close enough for a good photo. Deaths, though? Those are a different story. Only 2 bison-caused deaths in the entire history of the park, and none since 1983. So injuries happen most years. Deaths are genuinely rare. I've seen the videos. A man walking up to a bison jam holding a tablet over his head like he's filming a nature documentary, instead of standing in one. Skiers getting within 20 feet of a bull bison. And I promise you, I'm not inventing this one. Somebody asked a bison, out loud, if they could ride it. That bison did not answer. Bison rarely do. They just put their head down and answer with their whole body. And that is when somebody ends up gored. It happened to an 83-year-old woman on the Storm Point Trail, lifted clean off the ground by the horns. A 47-year-old man at Lake Village. A 30-year-old man at the Upper Geyser Basin after a crowd pressed in too close for photos. And just a couple Fridays ago, June 26th, a 12-year-old visitor was injured by a bison near Mud Volcano, north of Fishing Bridge. It's a reminder that the 25-yard rule doesn't take a day off, just because somebody's on vacation. Now let's talk about something a little different. Yellowstone's thermal features. Yellowstone has more than 10,000 hydrothermal features. Geysers, hot springs, mud pots. More than half the active geysers on the entire planet are sitting right there. They are some of the most beautiful things you will ever lay eyes on. They are also, and I want to be real clear here, capable of killing you in under 1 minute if you do something foolish. Here's why. What looks like solid ground around those pools is actually a thin crust, sometimes as thin as a skim of ice on a pond. And underneath, water that can be near boiling, sometimes hotter, and in some spots acidic enough to dissolve things, not irritate your skin acidic. Dissolve things acidic. At least 22 people have died from falling into Yellowstone's thermal features since the park opened back in 1872. Now do the math with me. 22 deaths over more than 150 years works out to about 1 death every 6 or 7 years on average. That's not nothing. But it's also not the kind of thing that's happening every season. The first death was a 7-year-old boy, back in 1890. In 2016, a young man left the boardwalk at Norris Geyser Basin with his sister, looking for a place to soak. He knelt down to check the water temperature. He slipped, and he fell into a pool that was both scalding and highly acidic. By the next day, there wasn't enough of him left to recover. The day before that happened, 6 other people had been cited for walking off the boardwalk at a different thermal feature in that same park. In 2022, a 70-year-old man went into a pool at West Thumb. Weeks later, they found a shoe and part of a foot. Then, in 2025, a man got 5 days in federal jail for walking straight across the fragile features at Mammoth Hot Springs. Prosecutors said his footprints damaged formations that took nature thousands of years to build. The boardwalk isn't there to keep the view nice for photographs. It is the only thing standing between you and a hole that does not forgive mistakes. Need shipping, shredding, prints, or a real street address? Helena's locally owned and operated the UPS store has you covered, located at 2047 North Last Chance Gulch. Stop by and get it done right. Let's move over to Glacier for a minute because the bears there don't care much about your hiking schedule. Glacier's got somewhere around 300 grizzly bears wandering its slopes. That's part of the largest grizzly population left in the lower 48 states. That is not a reason to stay home. It is a reason to carry bear spray where you can actually reach it. On your hip, on your chest. Not buried at the bottom of your pack, where it'll do you exactly no good. In May of this year, a 33-year-old man from Florida was killed in what officials believe was a surprise encounter on the Mount Brown Trail near Sperry. It was the first bear fatality inside the park since 1998. A 28-year gap. Since the park opened back in 1910, 11 people have died in bear encounters there. Most of those happened during one rough stretch between 1967 and 1998. Call it roughly 1 death per decade overall. That tells you these things are rare. It also tells you they're real, and they happen fastest when nobody saw it coming. That's the whole point of making noise on the trail, hiking in groups, and not running through brushy, blind corner terrain. No grizzly attack has ever been recorded on a group of 4 or more people. Bears don't want trouble with a crowd. Give them the chance to know you're there, and most times they'll just go about their business. And here's some real perspective for you. Yellowstone pulled in nearly 4.75 million visits last year. Glacier saw over 3 million. Across the entire national park system, only about 9 people died from wildlife encounters between 2007 and 2023, out of nearly 5 billion visits. Think about that for a second. You are a lot more likely to drown, crash a car, or take a bad fall in a national park than you are to be killed by an animal. But rare doesn't mean impossible. And every story I just told you started with somebody thinking the odds didn't apply to them. Now here's one that gets me every time, because it comes from a good place and ends up being a death sentence. In 2016, a father and son found a newborn bison calf near Lamar Buffalo Ranch. Figured it looked cold. Loaded it into their vehicle. Drove it to a ranger station, thinking they were heroes. The herd wouldn't take it back. Rangers tried and tried. The calf kept walking up to cars and people instead of bison, because that's what it had learned to do in those first critical minutes. They had to put it down. The man got fined $235 and had to pay another $500 to a wildlife fund. A real bargain compared to what that calf paid. It happened again in 2023. Different man, same story, same ending. A newborn elk got the same treatment that very year. Picked up, driven off, never recovered. Here's what I need you to understand. A wild animal that's been touched by human hands can often be rejected by its own herd. Their mothers can smell it. You are not rescuing anything by putting your hands on a baby animal. You are orphaning it twice, once from its mother, and once from its whole future. If you see something that looks abandoned or hurt, call a ranger. Do not become one yourself. Ready for your next Montana home? Visit mostwantedrealestate.net, because that's how the West is sold. Now this last part doesn't get near enough attention, and it's the one that bugs me the most. Being as I've watched it happen, slow, over decades, right under my own feet. Up at Logan Pass and Glacier, there's a stretch of alpine meadow that's home to more than 30 rare Arctic alpine plants, some found almost nowhere else on Earth. Before the boardwalk went in, foot traffic had worn the natural trail down so badly that switchbacks were getting cut, and in places, the trail had widened out to 12 feet across, just from people walking wherever they pleased, so they studied it. Researchers actually trampled a test patch of that meadow on purpose back in 1967, just to see how long it would take to come back. You know what they found? Walked on 15 times a week. It took 19 to 25 years to recover. Walked on 50 times a week, which is much closer to what a busy trail sees. It took 25 to 30 years. 30 years. That is not a season. That is most of a person's working life. Just to grow back grass and wildflowers that a few thousand careless footsteps wiped out. Once they built the boardwalk, the difference showed up fast. Only about 2% of people stepped off the boardwalk, compared to 19% who used to wander off the old natural trail. That's the whole reason that walkway exists. It's not there to make your hike easier. It's there because somebody did the math on how long this place takes to heal, and decided you weren't worth the wait. So stay on it every single time. The view is just as good from where you're supposed to stand. I've watched this state for longer than I care to admit, and the pattern is always the same. The folks who have the best time are the ones who treat Montana like they're visiting someone's house, not like they bought the place. So here's the short version. No fine print. Keep your distance. 100 yards from bears and wolves. 25 yards from everything else. Stay on the boardwalk. Stay on the trail every single time. Never touch, feed, or rescue wildlife, especially babies. Carry bear spray where you can reach it if you're in glacier country. And pack out what you bring in. This place will hand you the best afternoon of your life, if you let it. Sunrise over a ridge. Fog lifting off a valley. A bison herd moving slowly across an open field, at a distance that keeps everybody breathing. It doesn't bend the rules for anybody. And it sure doesn't care how many followers you've got. But it ain't out to get you either. The odds are good. Just don't go testing them. You don't find Montana. You either fit into it or you don't. Behave like you fit. If you got something out of this one, do me a favor and leave a review. Doesn't have to be fancy, just honest. 5 stars if you're feeling generous. And a little note about your own scariest wildlife moment if you're feeling chatty. It helps other folks find the show, and frankly, it's the least you can do for a Bigfoot who's been standing out in the weather, telling you stories for free. You can find all the details from today's episode, along with everything else we're cooking up, over at the406life.com. Montana Max, over and out. Got a Montana story, business, or unsolved mystery you want on the show? Head to the406life.com and drop me a line. No smoke signals required. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a stomp, stumble, or tall tale. Tell your friends, tell your grandma, heck, tell that guy who swears he saw me near Whitefish. I was just buying donuts, all right? Until next time, keep it outrageous, keep it kind, and keep living the 406 life. Montana Max, over and out.
That's the